It is week 4 in the NFL, and the 2-1 Colts are set to host the Oakland Raiders this Sunday afternoon in Lucas Oil Stadium. This is a team that the Colts saw last year in 2018 and was a game and a win that really sparked that run that eventually led them to that late playoff run for you. So this is a team that is a little bit familiar. You've still seen John Gruden and Derek Carr before last year and kind of what they did well and what they kind of struggled with last season. I went back and watched the tape for that game, so I'm going to talk about that on kind of the second half of the podcast, but I'm going to lead into that with kind of building on the Falcons win and what that meant for the Colts as they found another way to win. And as this season is going to build on, we're going to find out more about the Colts and might find out more about Jacoby Brissett under Frank Reich's offense as he's stepped in here pretty nice this year and had a really nice game, of course, against the Falcons on Sunday. So there are a little bit of injury news this week and kind of some unfortunate injury news that I'm going to talk about too. And that's going to really hurt you on Sunday afternoon against the Raiders. This is a game where the Colts should win this one. It's at home. They opened as, I believe, 6.5-point favorites against the Raiders. So we'll see kind of how that changes throughout the week as more news is coming out about the injuries for the Colts. But I really think that you can get this game even without some of these key players that are injured, but I will go into that as Pierre Desir is on the injury list this week, and this is for a hamstring injury. This is something that really stood out to me as this is probably going to linger on. We've seen it time and time again with Colts players, and from my personal experience, a hamstring injury will linger on just a little bit longer, and that's kind of what it's sounding like to me as I've kind of dived into where that happened, and it was something that kind of sparked on Sunday. It was a tweak, and kind of this week in practice, it wasn't feeling too good. So I expect Pierre Desir to miss on Sunday. He's not officially ruled out yet, but look for Desir probably to not be out there against the Raiders, and something to monitor against the Chiefs as well, as that is such a lingering injury. So I expect him to be out. So you're going to have Kenny Moore and Quincy Wilson and Rock Sin in there and really test your depth here at corner and see how that does. As last year in 2018, Derek Carr really killed you in the passing game and was efficient in that game as out in Oakland. And the Colts gave up 28 points in that game, which is far too much and something that they don't want to do again on Sunday. Darius Leonard, this is another thing. I thought that he was going to be a slam dunk to play this week, but that's not the case. He did not practice again on Wednesday afternoon. I'm taping this on Thursday morning, so the Colts have not had practice yet. So we will monitor. He has to practice today if he wants to play on Sunday. So if he does not play, if he is not a participant in practice today, he will officially be out for Sunday. So something to monitor, of course, is he is a key cog and something that is really going to hurt not having 2 weeks in a row your leader there on defense. T.Y. Hilton, that's going to be probably one. He's going to probably miss on Sunday. We'll see how he's feeling. Of course, last season with his ankle injury, he was able to not have practice and still participate in the games. And Frank Reich has honed in his talks with the media this week that this is a big game against an AFC opponent. It's a huge game for them, and it's not something that they're looking to just rest their players. They want everyone out there if they have the chance. So T.Y. Hilton does have a possibility to play on Sunday. If it were up to me, I would probably rest him so he's a little bit better to go for Kansas City and then to go into that bye week and let him recover there. But I'd say he was probably doubtful if I had to put a grade on him for that. And we know that Malik Hooker is out probably 4 to 6 weeks with the meniscus tear, and that's really, really, really a killer, especially this week as you're looking to limit Derek Carr in the passing game, and then looking forward to next week as again he didn't play against the Chiefs last season um, in the AFC divisional game, and he will not play again this against Kansas City in Week 5, as he will miss out, and that's really going to be tough as you're going against Patrick Mahomes in the passing game. But we will get there when we get there. Got to get past Oakland this week. So the injuries, that's really not great, as you want as healthy a football team as you can, of course. But I think that without T.Y. Hilton, I think that the passing game will still get by, and I think that there's going to be opportunities for the tight ends to have a big game, who I think are going to have a big game. You also saw Ryan Kelly did not practice on Wednesday, but that was for an illness. And Taekwon Lewis did not practice with an ankle, and Al-Qadim Muhammad with a neck. And I believe that's something that we saw on Sunday, or against the Falcons. He did not participate either. So that kind of rounds out the injury list as the other guys. And Jabal Sheard, he was a limited participant on Wednesday, so that's a good sign for him as he is trying to make his comeback for this year, as he is really trying to come back and step into this Colts front on defense to get a little bit more pressure on the quarterback this week, as you did not get Matt Ryan sacked last week in Lucas Oil Stadium. So that's something that you're really wanting this week, as they had 4 sacks in each of their first 2 games. So to not get a sack in week 3, that's not what you want, and they're looking to build on there. I think that now it's, Brissett's opportunity is continuing, and we're going to see how he's going to continue to grow as a quarterback in Frank Reich's offense, and how he's going to build off of this nice game that he had against the Falcons, and if he can string together consecutive games like that. And, we're going to see how this defense is going to come out after that Falcons game, where they just got torched by Matt Ryan, especially in the second half in the zone defense. So I really want to see this defense disguise more man and zone coverage, put more pressure on Derek Carr than you did on Matt Ryan, and also just limit them to no big plays. And that's going to be tough, as Malik Hooker is your guy for the no big plays. But you got Kari Willis that's going to probably play that similar role to Malik Hooker, that kind of that deep safety, and hopefully they can limit them to more yards, and Derek Carr won't be as efficient as Matt Ryan was last week, as we saw. So that's going to be what I'm looking at. I'm looking at Brissett, that Marlon Mack has a big shot this week, as he did last season, where he rushed for 25 carries, 132 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Oakland Raiders out in Oakland last season. That really set the stage for his great season last year, as he missed kind of that first part of the season with that hamstring injury. So look for him. I did go back and I watched the Colts versus the Raiders last season. That was a game which saw the Colts the victors 42-28. Luck made some really great throws that game, and I really watched closely to see, what the differences are between Luck and Brissett, just from looking at this little clip. And I think that Brissett can do a lot of these things that Luck did last year. It was a crucial little part, and it was about 12 minutes left in the first quarter, and it was the first drive of the game, and it was 3rd down and 9 from about the Colts 35 or something. And, a big a big drive, as Frank Reich has emphasized time and time again, that the Colts want to step on the gas early and set an early tone. So this was one that could have seen the Colts sputter, and Andrew Luck dropped back in the shotgun, and he was looking down the field. He did his read to the right, did his read to the left, saw nothing open. He stepped up in the pocket and just threw the ball 3 yards in the air to Marlon Mack that was coming out of the backfield, and Marlon Mack scurried through 3 defenders and got the first down there. That's a play that, of course, Jacoby Brissett can make. That this is a play that we've seen Jacoby Brissett make, and people emphasize Andrew Luck's absence so much, and that is quite valid because he was a special talent in the NFL. But in Frank Reich's offense, and we've seen it from Jacoby Brissett, there's so much of an emphasis on the check downs, and if there's not the play open down the field, then check it down and let's get it ahead of the chains. And in that situation, Luck did his reads looking down the field and looking at the field. All the receivers were covered, and Marlon Mack was a smart choice there. So that's something that Brissett has done well at for the first 3 games. I thought for the first 2 games he did it a little bit too much, but we're seeing him make smart reads, and something that Andrew Luck started to develop on last season with Frank Reich is there was a change from Chuck Pagano's offense to Frank Reich's kind of offensive mind there. And I think a positive one, and one that fits Jacoby Brissett really well. And I think that you look at what Luck did that game and some of the really nice throws. One that stood out to me was Eric Ebron. When you were down in the game, he throws one up on 3rd down, and Eric Ebron on the right side of the end zone makes a really nice grab in coverage. Luck just threw it up to his big guy there, and he made a big play. That's a big time throw, and that's one that I want to see Brissett make, just kind of a lob up into the end zone from about 20-30 yards out, and let your guy go up there and get it. We haven't seen that this year from him, as he's made some throws down the field, especially last week against the Falcons, but that's going to be one that we need to see Jacoby have in his arsenal, and I think that he does. But just some of the things like that stood out to me. I thought that Derek Carr just had too big of a day for what you want out of him. He was 21 of 28, 244 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And the Colts were really just kind of in a soft zone all day long, and it just allowed for Derek Carr to just eat you up all game long. And for most of the game, the game was tied. It was going back and forth, and the Raiders actually did take a lead there in the 3rd quarter before the Colts really came back. And with Darius Leonard's strip on Doug Martin, it allowed for the Colts to drive down and Marlon Mack get two touchdowns to end the game and clinch it for the Colts. So that was a big game. As 42 points was a lot that you scored last season, and this is a high-powered offense, and it still is. And with Marlon Mack still on your team and healthy this week, I think that there's a big chance for him to have a really nice game. As Ty, of course, is out, and we're going to see what they do. Like I said, I think that the tight ends are going to have a big week this week. You're going to see a lot from Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron, and they're going to be creative with getting everyone the football. And hopefully we're going to see a little bit more this week from Paris Campbell and also Deon Cain as they are developing, of course. And we will see some more from the rest of this offense. So, moving on to this matchup, and one that I went back and I've watched some Raiders clips from this season. Derek Carr is semi-efficient with throwing the ball. He's got a nice completion percentage, but his touchdowns to interceptions, he's thrown 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So he's not making the right reads, and I think that a couple of those were some bad throws looking back at it now. So that's going to be something, as you're going to want to get another takeaway this week. That's going to be big for you. And the Raiders have not had an interception in 2019. So Brissett has been really smart with the football this year for the most part. And I think that it's time that, he's going to have another big game where he probably doesn't turn the ball over, and going to have another efficient game from what I see. And the Colts also, um, leading after 3 weeks, are leading the NFL in fewest yards and offensive penalties with only 114 after 3 weeks, which is the number one in the NFL, which is great to see the Colts be a disciplined football team, and something that has not been the case for the past couple of years before Frank Reich, because this has been something that's kind of plagued the Colts, as we've seen so many years watching the Colts, as the offensive penalties and holdings have really killed them throughout the Chuck Pagano era. And now we're seeing Frank Reich. After last year, you did have some penalties last season. I think the Colts kind of finished middle of the pack in penalties, but this year, starting out with that emphasis, I think that that's great. So looking up, the 2019 Raiders defense this year, they've given up a 68.8% completion percentage to quarterbacks after 3 weeks, which is not great, as that's about what Jacoby Brissett's completion percentage is this year. And he's had a pretty hot start as far as completion percentage. They've also given up 286.3 passing yards per game, which is 24th in the NFL. They've given up 9.2 yards per attempt, which is 30th in the NFL. And they've given up an average of 118.6 QBR rating in to quarterbacks through 3 weeks, which is 28th in the NFL. So even without T.Y. Hilton this week, there's going to be big chances in the passing game, as you're looking at this Oakland team. This team is not great on paper, and they're not necessarily great on the field. As last week, they really kind of folded last week and gave up a lot of big plays and got down big. So this week, I like our offensive line against their defensive line. I think that there's a lot of holes there, and as you've seen, that they just haven't had a pass rush since Khalil Mack has left Oakland. So I like our offensive line against their defensive line, and even though that they haven't given up a 100-yard rusher this season, I think that Marlon Mack probably breaks that trend and will get 100 yards this game. I just like our offensive line too much to not bet on that. Yeah, I think another point I had here, I think Ty misses the game, but Jacoby still puts up big numbers, and we're going to see another efficient game for him. Probably around 250, 300 yards, somewhere in that area, with a couple scores. Darius Leonard, it's kind of trending toward him being out, which is unfortunate and something that the Colts are really going to miss, as not having, Hooker, Desir, and Leonard. These are three of your best players on your defense. And even though they're the Raiders, this is an NFL team and a NFL team that really killed you last year in a lot of ways. But the Colts were able to get it done last season. So that's going to be something to watch, as I still think with all the injuries and everything that the Colts have kind of suffered this week as far as injury news, which has not been necessarily great looking at your starters, the Colts will still win this game, move to 3-1, and go into that Kansas City game with some confidence and just kind of like playing with house money. I think that the final score for this one is going to be the Colts scoring 31, and the Raiders will score around 20. I'd say 21, 31, 21. The final is what I think. The Colts will cover the spread. I believe the Colts, opened up as 6.5-point favorites. So I think that they can manage that and get this one done at home. And hopefully this trend of winning here in the past couple of weeks, and really should be 3-0 at this point, as you drop that game in overtime against the Chargers, and that was a killer. But onwards and upward, and I think the Colts have done a nice job of bouncing back and getting two impressive games in a row here, moving toward the rest of the season here. This is where it's going to really get interesting, and with the divisional race here, who's going to win the AFC South? It's going to be so interesting because the Texans, I think, are going to stay right with the Colts for most of the year as far as wins. And I think that it's probably going to be another year where we split the game with the Texans. I can see the Colts doing that, winning a game at home and lose. Well, or losing at home and winning in T.Y. Hilton Stadium. That could be a possibility as well. But hopefully they stay right with the AFC South race, and that would be the way that they get into the playoffs and not have to rely on that wild card spot. As we saw last year, anything could happen. So that's going to be something to watch, but it is very early for that, and I think the Colts have a lot of proven to do still. I think that Jacoby Brissett is making strides in the right direction to be that franchise quarterback, and he's really proven a lot of people wrong that kind of doubted him after Andrew Luck's abrupt retirement and people that kind of counted the Colts out. But I think the Colts have a good shot this year to not only be right in that playoff race, but actually in the playoffs and making a little bit of noise this year, as we're still finding out about this team, and we're going to find out more about them on Sunday against the Raiders. So can't wait to see that, and can't wait to see what this offense is going to do, and this defense and how they're going to respond after a pretty bad week and now losing two or three of your starters again for this week. So thank you for joining me for another podcast. That's about all I want to talk about. If there's anything that comes out, I might make a quick note right before Sunday's game. If any more kind of news breaks out or anything. But that about does it. Thank you for listening, and hopefully the Colts can get it done here on Sunday and then go into that Arrowhead game and just play tough, and you can't overlook the Raiders. And I think that the Colts and Frank Reich is going to have to do a good job of, instilling in his players that, no game is easy. And the Colts know that as they buy into this 1-0 every week mantra. And they've done a nice job of doing that. So the trend for that will likely continue this week. So I will be back with another podcast for sure after the game on Sunday. I will drop it on Sunday afternoon. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Have a good one.